Welcome back to Books and Beer. We are at Fractal Brewing Project out on kind of like the South Parkway area. This is new for us. We're out of downtown. Yeah. We're away from the library. The library let us loose.
We're expanding.
Yeah, we're expanding. But today we have a Guava Mango Sour beer in it. I swear it tastes like vacation.
And you know, I'm not a big fan of sour beer, and this is so good.
Yeah, it's actually
it really is. It balances well.
It does. I figured I'd start because I have a few depressing ones, and I know that you have some happier things. Yes. And you know, sometimes we get a beer, and I think very in depth about things I'm going to choose. I'm like, oh, this relates to this point, and this relates to this, how this tastes, or the name, or blah. This is a Guava Mango Sour, and I'm not going to lie, I put mango into our book catalog search system and came up with mango books. Yes. There are surprising a lot. No guava books, just so you're aware. No guava books, but we have mango books, a lot of them. I'll start with what is probably the most depressing, which is called The Bite of the Mango by Mariatu Kamara. Mm-hmm. It's a memoir. A young adult biography is where it's shelved if you're interested in going to the library. So Mariatu was born and raised in Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa. Tiny little nation in West Africa near, I want to say Liberia, but I could have my geography wrong. So it's based mostly during the 90s and early 2000s. So this is really recent history for my taste, but we'll go with some recent nonfiction. So during that time, Sierra Leone was entrenched in a civil war. And she was around 12 when she's kidnapped by rebel military. Wow. And one of the things the rebel military did for almost everyone, especially children, was cut their hands off. And so part about this is talking about the Civil War from a child's perspective, figuring out how to live after becoming an amputee. And she is actually a very interesting person because she eventually got a sponsorship from UNICEF. So she's now a UNICEF special representative for children of armed conflict. So it's...
How old is she?
She was born in 86.
Okay.
So she's about 33, 34 now. So, for all of y'all who are in your mid-30s and like drinking beer, think about this poor woman who doesn't have hands. And we're going to stray away from that thought. The bite of the mango comes from the first thing she was able to eat for herself after her hands were taken off. And she describes it, the sweetness of the fruit, as being something to live for. But it's juxtaposed with the fact that she's having to figure out how to handle this piece of fruit with her arms. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of figuring out how to move forward after this traumatic injury and new lifestyle. So that's where like the bite of the mango, the title, comes from.
Yeah.
It is recent history. This is probably not something you're going to learn about in school these days, but it's still interesting. And I like that this is young adult biography. It is written to a level that can be understood by anyone interested in history, specifically recent history. So that's my very depressing start. My sandwich book is called The House on Mango Street. It is by Sandra Cisneros. She is a writer who was born in Chicago, but she's of Mexican descent, and she talks a little bit in her introduction about becoming a female Mexican writer for her publisher that she finds. Mm-hmm. But this book itself is the story of a young Latino girl growing up in Chicago.
Stretch.
Not a big stretch. And she basically, how she invents herself. Mm-hmm. This book, the chapters are described as like a series of vignettes, and the most down-to-earth way I can describe that is like micro stories. Mm-hmm. They're shorter than short stories, but they're not like poems. Mm-hmm. They're really just like snapshots. Like if you're thinking back or reflecting back on a memory and talking to someone about it, it's kind of with that brevity. Okay. It is very cute, and I would suggest it if you need something a little more lighthearted. It does talk a lot about Mexican culture versus immigrant American culture and how that has to come together some way.
But it's a novel, or is it a biography?
It is a novel.
Okay.
And I do think it's more like loosely based
Okay.
on her life and her feelings. This was like a long time coming book where she worked on it for years and put it down for years and then eventually picked it up and finished it. It was a very quick read. I did it in less than a day. Because again, the stories are, it's only this thick.
So you just pick it up, put it down. One
Yeah,
of those books you
Pick
just
it up,
pick
put it
up,
up, put it down. It's really cute.
Those are good to have.
Really good storytelling. And for my depressing sandwich finisher here, this is my closing bread. This is called Beyond the Mango Tree. It's by Amy Brownwen Zemser. And it is also loosely based on her life. It is about a white family who moves to Liberia for the father's work. The father's not home very much. The mother is diabetic in the 1980s, which if you've ever seen Steel Magnolias, you know that treating diabetes, even as late or as recent as the 80s, could be a very up and down thing. The problem with that ends up being she develops a lot of mental and physical health issues, and she kind of centers that on her daughter, named Serena. And the craziest way this manifests is she will tie her to a mango tree that's in the yard, so in her paranoid brain, her daughter cannot get away from her. She can stay with her forever. Eventually, a Liberian boy named Boima finds her, lets her free of the mango tree, and they escape the yard together and they go on adventures. And really, the book itself is about they are developing friendship.
Yeah.
It's a very short friendship, but they're developing friendship. Other themes it touches on, economic privilege. It talks about race relations. It talks a lot about access to medicine, particularly with yellow fever in Liberia. These days, you have to get a yellow fever vaccination in order to travel there. And this is really, it touches on that just almost peripherally, but interesting enough. They use also Liberian English dialect, which I was very thrown off at first because I was looking at these Liberians speaking in a very specific vernacular of English, and I'm like, what is this author doing here? It was a little startling until I realized that in the author's note it said she lived in Liberia and this was her experience. And I was like, okay, I feel a little better about that. But it does talk about Liberian English dialect and actually explains the use of it. So interesting things out of, but overall depressing book. Those are
need a beer for that one.
You're gonna need a beer for these. You're gonna need a beer for these. Why not Guava Mango Sour? What do you have? Please tell me you have something happy.
Mine are all happy.
Excellent.
So I'm thinking guava, mango. I'm thinking 2019 when we're all carefree and sitting around drinking tropical drinks, laying by the pool. With friends. Without partitions or mess. And as my friend Kylie always says, it gives you the feels, all that nostalgia. And this is really a good beer to be having on such a warm day.
Yes.
It's so beautiful right now. It's going to freeze again soon, but this is a great beer to have. I would definitely recommend this. My first book I chose this one not because it had anything to do with guava or mangoes, but because the third book of this is coming out this year. And if you guys remember back in November, I told you to go out and get the Bridgerton series.
Yeah.
Because you'd end up on a wait list. There's still a wait list for that. It's March. So listen to me on this one. Go ahead and start checking these out. We have the first two in the series. The third one's coming out this fall. This is called Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. It's a romantic comedy. It's Pretty Woman, but backwards. It's a girl who has to have the intimacy coach. Now, the reason that she wrote this story is because a few years earlier, her daughter was misdiagnosed with autism by a school teacher. So she took her to the doctor. She starts researching this. They all determine your daughter's not autistic. But she figures out she is. Now, this is a woman in her mid-30s married with kids who finally realizes, I'm not awkward, I have Asperger's, things start clicking in her head all of a sudden, where she's trying too hard at like she sees her popular friend and just imitates her all day long, but by the end of the day she's exhausted. Mm-hmm. She's not being true to herself. She's not quite pulling it off, even trying to pretend. And so she reflects this in her writing. She says once she realized this about herself, she just threw everything out the window and said, I'm going to write the way I want to write. And her first book was a hit. It was so much a hit that by the time the second book came out, this one was still on hold.
Oh, so that's the author's story.
Yeah, that's the author's story.
Okay.
So she started writing the way she wanted to write, and all of a sudden she had a hit on her hands.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, by the time the second book came out, this one was still on hold at the library. So, and that was a year and a half ago. So it's a really great story. The lady in the story is Stella. She is 30 years old, or approaching 30. And she has decided she's going to take her parents' advice and time to settle down and get married. But she knows she's autistic. She knows she's socially awkward. She compares kissing to like sharks eating. Like she doesn't quite get it. But considering who the author is, I really like how she's portraying this woman honestly.
Right.
And her thoughts just are great. It's a very intelligent woman, very beautiful woman. You know, this woman is wonderful. She just can't figure out intimacy. Sure. So she hires an intimacy coach in the form of a really, really gorgeous gigolo. And gorgeous gigolo. Okay. This is the perfect book to read by the pool. This is the perfect book to read with sprinklers going in the backyard. The kids run around. This is a romantic comedy. It's hilarious. So I would definitely pick this one up and go ahead and put the next one on hold because you're just going to want to read through them. They all kind of connect.
Okay.
So it's not the same characters. Like you'll see the characters reflected in the other books, but it's about a totally different couple.
Oh, okay.
So it moves on. All right. This book I chose. This one, again, you're going to want to put this on hold. We had this book in the system. I have a copy at home. That's my personal copy, which is how I'm reading this because this is out of print now. It's coming back into print in 2021 this May. We've already ordered it. There's already a couple people on hold for it. It's a really cool book. It's the book of body language, which you know, you have someone who studies this who understands that even small gestures make a big difference. When
sitting here trying
you.
to sit as still as possible now.
Heather is very conscious of her gestures right now. But no, it talks about, you know, like acing a job interview, going on a date, approaching someone you don't know. I had a friend who got reprimanded in her annual review because of how she sat during meetings was disrespectful, and it never occurred to her.
Oh my goodness.
That how she was sitting was considered disrespectful and just like nonchalant when people are trying to talk to her. And so I think this is really cool. Everyone in my family has read this book because it's in my house. And you can pick it up, put it down, one of those great books like that. Mm-hmm. I love it. I'm excited that we're getting more copies now. And I think you guys will really love this book. I'm ending on a very happy note because when I think of, you know, Mango Guava, I think of, you know, sunny, the happiest place on earth, Disney World.
Disney.
I went to Disney a lot as a kid in the 80s. My cousins lived down in the Tampa area. Go Andrea and Kevin. We used to go there a lot. I went a few times since then. But honestly, every time you go to Disney, it changes. Yeah. There's something new. And I'm not just saying they add a ride. I'm saying there's like a whole new park. So there's so much to expect. This is the 2020 edition. It covers the Star Wars. It covers like tips for dining, how to, where to stay, how to save money. Just like the new things. It even tells you like where the secret Mickeys are all over Disney. And it also has a section on Universal Studios in the back. So, because you know, you're going to combine.
Of course, you're going to combine that.
You are. So, but no, this is fun. Again, it's the 2020 edition, but I mean, I've gone to Disney so many times and it's still very relevant. I learned a lot with this book, and it's an easy read. So, and it will go well with a yummy beer.
And for those needing to take a trip here in the pandemic, I hear they're very strict about masking.
They are, and my friend who's a travel agent said that right now it's really hard to book for Disney, even in autumn, because it's already filled up.
Of course it is.
So if you're getting ready to, if you're wanting to book a trip, go ahead and start looking ahead of time. I hear a year in advance is kind of how you got to do it.
Yeah. Alright.
So, yeah.
In the meantime, come back to Fractal Brewing Project, drink lots of the the Guava Mango Sour, and I do believe we'll be back here for the next episode too. So
Very
come
excited.
back and stay tuned for all the other yummy things we'll have to report on. And of course, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the library's YouTube page, and we'll see you next time.